Okay, so in this video I'm going to go over the decision app step 1 and I'm going to do a little discussion about just some of the code concepts to help you get a good start here. So the first thing is the setup. So you're going to create a new folder called My App in your private repo and then create another folder called step 1. Okay, and then inside of there create your normal files, your index, your main, and a readme file. And make sure to write the script with the deferred from the index for the main so that it's connected. So just to show you what that looks like from a folder perspective, so this is my private repo that I have open. I have my app step 1 and then that's the files that are created. Now we will create these as we move through the future weeks, but for this week this is what you need. Okay? So now what you want to do is in that README file, you want to do the following, right? Give your app a name and a description of the purpose. So just to show you an example, like daily activity decider was what I came up with. It helps me determine my activities and my caloric intake based on my sleep score and the day of the week. So I just gave it a little more description as far as what the type of workouts I do. And so just, you want to describe it. Now the one thing I will say as I move through this file, one thing I've noticed is that some students or some coders like to actually jump right into writing the code and then they come back and document. I kind of do them parallel, which I start to write code, but then I come back and document. So, you find your way through this. I only make you do one commit here, but you do need to include all of these parts. Okay, so now you're going to need variables, and you're going to need at least 3 global variables. Now, through the weeks, we will end up, of course, minimizing global variables because that's the idea. But you need at least 1 string, 1 number, and 1 boolean. And then I am already talking a little about code here, right? This is our general rule, is use const unless and let where appropriate. But in general, we use const only if we can't use const, we use let, and we don't use var. Okay, so that was just some guidance on the variable setup. And then you'll want to talk about your decision-making process. So write your understanding, not in code, of how your app will make your selected decision. Okay, make sure you have at least one type of calculation in there. Okay, and then output. So for this step, the output for the console.log is fine. It'll just be based on your the inputs and your conditional logic, right, from what you did here. Now this is just outlined here for me, where I went through and I actually said, here are my global variables. And you can see I have sleep score, it's a number, and you want to talk about what it represents. Current day is a string, the current day of the week. Is it a hit day? And this is going to return, so I'm going to have some logic here that returns, it'll create a boolean if the current day is Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, and if not, it'll return, if it is, it'll return true, otherwise it'll return false. So then you can see on the run day, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, if those are true, if that's true, it'll return that. And then I have my basal metabolic rate. So those are my variables. And then I did the logic. I did a little logic implementation, not required, but I did it just to show. And then this is, of course, the part where you go through and talk about what kind of decision your app is going to make. Now I'm going to pause here for a minute and go back and talk about what kind of decision you might want to think about. And here's the thing I'm going to recommend and the best path forward, in my opinion. And if you have any doubts about this, you definitely could come see me. But in general, I would suggest to you to use a decision-making process that is something that is very close to you, that you do very often. Don't use something that's fairly generic that you could find code out on the web. I really want to see you come up with an idea and then write code to implement that idea. Okay, so that's my suggestion on what kind of decision to make. So if you again, ask me if you have any questions there. So my app is going to ask that the if is a conditional statement. So when we get to this in a minute, just know the if is going to look for a condition. If the current, now this is written in English, and then of course what you'll end up doing is in your main.js, you will write the logic for this, okay? The actual if statements themselves. So when we talk about the if or the if else or even a switch statement, right? We also use operators in order to make decisions. So in this case, I'm saying if the day is a hit workout day and my sleep score, right? So these are, right? So if I come down here, these are the, if is the conditional, this is the comparison, right? Is greater than 90, the app decides I should go. So is it with this particular day, that's the sleep score, then I should go for a hit workout and increase my BMR, basically my calories, by 20%. So then, now, how many of these do you need? I don't give you a specific, but I would want to have this be substantive. So I would want to see no less than 4. And what the way I declare this is at least 2 blocks. And I'll show you what I mean just in general by what that means in a minute, okay? So this helps you get organized. Again, you might write code and come back here. So I have then, if it's a hit day and my score is greater than 70, so it's not greater than 90, it's greater than 70, then I should go for stretching and decrease my BMR by 5%. So here's my calculation piece. And that's what I was talking about here. In your decision-making process, you're using conditionals and comparison, but you're also doing some type of calculation. Okay? And then the output for now is this the type of workout and the BMR target for the day. And again, I didn't go through all these, but I think you get the idea after going through one. Okay, so just moving down now here's the place where I'm actually giving you specifics in the code. So now write conditionals, if, and comparison operators, and or, right, that will reflect the results of your decision based on the inputs, the variables provided. Right, you need at least 2 conditional blocks, right, and the use of and or, right? And this is kind of hard to say because some people might use both. I actually ended up using both, not together, but in my overall code, right? The use of and or both, right? And I added this today is if you you need to use an if or an if else or a switch block, okay? Now in the case of the switch block, you do have to think about how you're going to implement the and the or, so you can consider that. And then do write comments in your code as well to help make that clear. Now here's the key, don't write functions. And I know it's so normal at this point to write functions, but I would say don't. And I actually count off for so don't do it because you also get points off. I just want you to write the conditional, the basic, what we call your logic of your app, and also called the algorithm. Okay, in your output in here, I say the output. You can use it on the page or you can use it in the console, but you do need to use template strings for your output. So reach out for help. And I talked about this in the attendance for this week, right? So the idea is that we're not going to write it with you. You're going to write it and then ask for help in specific areas, because the idea of this work is that you need to write code. Okay, so then commit with my app step 1 and then provide me a history. Now, by the way, you can absolutely do more commits than this. And if you want to kind of show your work process, that's fine. What I will look for is, did you include all the written section described above? Did your code meet the requirements, and did it work and create the desired output? And this will be included, maybe, I say maybe in this case, because by the time we get to step 3, that's when the code review starts. So we'll have your code up to step 3. But I just put this here so that you understand that. So what I want to do now is move over to VS Code and show you my main.js. Now below here, I'm only showing you my inputs. I do have, and you can kind of see this over here, I have the rest of my conditional my if statements and my operators down here. But I have, now here are my 3 inputs. Now I end up having 5 variables. So like this is a number, right? This is a string, and here is another string, but I do have other variables I've declared below here that are actually they use the boolean, so that one you're just not seeing. And there's a reason I'm actually not showing you the rest of my code, and I struggled with this, and which is why I end up re-recording this particular video, is because I've had the experience where I show students my code and I end up seeing that the approach that I took in students' code, and that's not the idea. But I do want to give you enough information to help you understand. So when we say if, like a conditional, that's an if, and then in here is the condition. Now this is actually not, this is just showing you, right? Now we'll talk about what that means, right? And then you have, this is your block. Right, so whatever, if this condition is met, if this condition, and in this case it resolves to whatever your condition is, it'll resolve to true or it'll resolve to false, right? Okay, now that also gets a little more involved, of course, when you're using and, right, and or. So we've gone over these concepts, but I'm just giving you, like, here's if this is true, right? If the whole, whatever your condition is, resolves to true, then of course this line runs, right? Now, here's where you can do else if, and this is what I was talking about. So if else, sorry, if else, okay? So now we have another condition, okay? I'm just looking at that to see where I may have messed up. Is it else if? So funny because every programming language, there we go, has it a little different. Now in this case the reason it's a little is I don't have anything in here, right? So if this is false, now again I'm not writing the conditions for you, right? Else if, now it's going to check this condition, and then you could always use just an end else condition as kind of a default. Now the switch statements we have already gone over. If you want to use that one, great. Okay, so now that's the conditional. So now the comparison is like, right, this would be, and now I'm not going to write this exactly, but I'm just giving you that idea. If sleep score, right, is greater than, right, 90, right, then this line will run. And this is where I could also do and, so both conditions have to be true for this line to run, right? And then if I did or, now by the way, let me just be clear here, right? There's another conditional here that I'm not showing that you will want to write, because in your code you're going to want to have somewhere you've used the and or the or. That's where it gets fun to talk about it. Again, this could be, like day, like current day, maybe equal to, okay, right? Now I end up handling mine different, which is, by the way, why I didn't show it, right? Now this is not match my logic. More than anything, I'm just showing you the example, okay? So this is one block, okay? So you need 2 of these, right? Because in a decision-making process, it's often true. It's not just like and actually probably what would make more sense here is also because I end up saying I'll just show you this. I'm not showing the code, but I actually end up having a variable that's a boolean that I use in my conditional statements based on the day, okay? So then, right, so this would be my first block, and then when I write another one, right, so then I would have 2 of these blocks, and then in this case I would also set variables based on my decision, right? So I end up setting the variable of my BMR, because that's my calculated variable, because what I do is if I modify it based on my logic, right, so if I am doing a hit day, I increase my BMR, right? So there is definitely some work that I could be doing inside of here that I'm not showing, but I'm just trying to give you the example, right? So then this will be your second block. Again, I'm not showing it all, right? And then you could have your console.log, okay, that has, and in this case, a template string to show, right, your particular, right, so like sleep score. Okay, so what I want to do is the last thing. I'm just giving you an idea. Like for me, right, so I have my code running, and I'm going to, for a minute, get rid of, just comment this out, because I'm actually, what's below here, as I said before, is my actual conditionals and comparisons. So right now, my inputs of 96 and Friday, based on it running through my conditional statement, should output, based on the way I want it to run, is that if it's a hit workout day, which in this case would be a hit workout day, right? So in this case, it'd be Friday is a run day, right? So in this case, Friday is a run day. Right, so in this case, here's what I'm looking at. I've switched over to the browser, and I've just given some information based on the sleep score of 96, and a Friday, you should go for a VO2 max run, and your calorie intake should be this. So if I was to, and this is where you test your code to make sure you get the kind of output you want. So if I was to simulate the inputs here, right, again, remember, think about it, in the future, this will become your form, right? So I'm going to say it is a, what day would be a hit day? Would be a Monday. So let's change this to Monday, right? So on a Monday, let's say my was 69, okay? So if and actually that wouldn't be the right one. It would be it would actually fall here, because it has to be greater than 70 for me to do a stretch if it's a hit day, right? Otherwise, right, it'd be less that decides I should take a rest day, and my BMR would be unchanged. So in this case, rest day calorie intake should be, right, my BMR, my basal metabolic rate. So what you want to do is make sure, right, your code reflects the decisions that you've laid out here. So you're writing that logic either here, or you're writing it in your code and then coming back and making sure you've documented it. Okay, so I hope this is a better a helpful walkthrough of what you need to do for this. Going forward, I probably won't do as much of this going over the code piece, but I think to get you started on the right foot, I felt like it was important. All right, hope this helped.